The day my father-in-law passed away felt like my entire world was being pulled out from under me. He was the one steady, kind presence in my life, the only one in that family who seemed to care whether I was okay. I remember the way he used to ask me if I'd eaten, or quietly slip me advice about saving money, almost like he knew his son couldn't or wouldn't take care of me. So when I lost him, it wasn't just grief over his death. It was the terrifying feeling that the thin thread holding my life together had just snapped. After the funeral, when the house was still filled with flowers and half-eaten casseroles from neighbors, my husband at the time, looked me in the eye with this cruel little smirk. He didn't even wait a day. "I don't need you anymore," he said flatly, his lips curling upward into something that wasn't a smile so much as a declaration of victory. "You're worthless." The words hit me harder than the funeral itself. For years, I had lived with this man, carried him really, because he never carried himself. He was unemployed, always, between jobs, always blaming the world, his father, me, anyone but himself, for why he had nothing. I worked 2 jobs at times, paid every bill, cooked, cleaned, did everything while he lounged on the couch. Still, I stayed because I thought loyalty mattered. I thought maybe if I held on long enough, he would change. That night, watching him smirk as he literally shoved me out the front door of the house I had helped keep afloat, I realized just how wrong I had been. The air outside was sharp, almost painful in my lungs. I didn't even have time to grab most of my things. He tossed a single bag after me and closed the door. That was it, years of my life reduced to a bag and a memory. I remember standing there on the sidewalk, my chest heaving, the smell of lilies still clinging to my clothes from the funeral earlier. A neighbor across the street watched quietly from their porch, but they didn't say a word. I think I must have looked like a ghost, hollow, broken, and discarded. For the next few days, I drifted. I slept on a friend's couch, too numb to cry properly. My body felt heavy, like it wasn't even mine anymore. I kept hearing his words, like they were tattooed on the inside of my skull. Worthless, worthless, worthless. And the sickest part, a small piece of me started to believe him. When the lawyer called about the will reading, I didn't plan to go. What was the point? It would just be another chance for my husband to strut around, collecting everything his father left behind while I sat there invisible. But something inside me sparked, the tiniest flicker of defiance. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I just needed closure. So I went. The office smelled faintly of old paper and leather, like every lawyer's office I'd ever imagined. My husband was already there when I walked in, leaning back in the chair with that same smug grin, tapping his fingers on the armrest as if he was waiting for his prize to be handed over. He barely glanced at me, and when he did, it was with that look of superiority, like I wasn't even worth the effort of a full glare. He honestly thought he had already won. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. My husband leaned forward, practically salivating, rubbing his hands together like a child on Christmas morning. I sat stiff, my palms pressed into my knees, bracing myself for the humiliation of watching him get everything while I got nothing. Then the lawyer stopped mid-sentence, raised his head, and gave my husband a look so sharp it could have cut glass. "Did you even bother reading the will?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with something close to disdain. My husband blinked, confused, his smirk faltering for the first time. "What do you mean?" he stammered. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, glanced at me, and then kept reading. And as the words poured out, my entire world shifted. The house, the savings, the estate, the family business, it wasn't his. It wasn't left to the son who had been waiting like a vulture for his father to die. It was left to me. All of it. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My ears rang, and I thought I'd misheard. My fingers curled into the fabric of my skirt as the lawyer slid the documents across the table in my direction. "Everything is hers," he said simply, as though it were the most natural fact in the world. The silence that followed was thick, electric. My husband's jaw dropped. His face went crimson, then pale, then crimson again. He slammed his fist on the table, rattling the pens and folders. "This is a mistake," he shouted, his voice cracking with rage and desperation. "It's supposed to be mine. He was my father." The lawyer didn't even flinch. "Your father was very clear about his wishes. The estate is not yours." My husband's eyes snapped to me then, wide and frantic. The smirk was gone, replaced by panic. "You," he started, pointing a trembling finger. Then, in an instant, his tone shifted. He leaned closer, his voice soft, dripping with fake sincerity. "Please, we can work this out. I didn't mean what I said. I was grieving. You know me. We can fix this. He even reached for my hand across the table, his palm sweaty and trembling. I stared at him, my heart pounding, and all the memories of our years together came rushing back. The endless nights of him doing nothing while I worked myself to exhaustion. The cruel words. The way he had laughed when he shoved me out of the house. The sound of the door slamming behind me. And now here he was, begging. I pulled my hand away. Slowly, deliberately. I didn't need to scream or curse or gloat. My silence was enough. I gathered the papers, stood up, and walked out of that office without looking back. The air outside felt different this time. Lighter, warmer, even though it was still the same gray day. I lifted my face to the sky and for the first time in years, I felt free. In the weeks that followed, the reality set in. The house was mine, the business was mine, the estate, the savings, everything. My father-in-law had seen through his son, and in his final act, he had made sure I was secure. He had left me more than just assets. He had left me validation. Proof that I wasn't worthless. That someone had seen the truth all along. My husband tried to contest the will. Of course he did. He stormed into courtrooms, filed papers, shouted about unfairness. But the will was airtight. His father had thought of everything, tied up every loose end. There was nothing he could do. His tantrums got him nowhere. Friends told me he started spiraling. No job, no money, no home. Sleeping on couches, begging old acquaintances for help, blaming everyone but himself for his downfall. The same man who had once smirked as he called me worthless now had nothing and no one. And here's the thing about revenge. People imagine it as fire and fury, as screaming matches and slammed doors. But real revenge, the kind that lingers, the kind that satisfies to your core, is quiet. It's watching the person who underestimated you crumble under the weight of their own arrogance. It's walking away with your dignity intact while they sit in the ruins of their own choices. I think often about my father-in-law's final gift to me. It wasn't just the estate. It was the strength to finally see myself clearly. He knew I had been carrying his son for years, and he knew I deserved better. His will wasn't just legal paperwork. It was a declaration. She matters. She is not worthless. Sometimes I still hear my husband's words, echoing in my head. I don't need you anymore. Worthless woman. But now, when I hear them, I smile. Because I know the truth. I was never worthless. I was the one holding everything together. I was the one worth trusting with the legacy. And in the end, it wasn't me who was discarded. It was him. Revenge, karma, justice, call it what you want. But when I walked out of that lawyer's office with everything, I wasn't just carrying papers and keys. I was carrying freedom, and I've never looked back.